options. So if you just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. If you unmute to ask a question or turn your camera on, it is going to be in the recording. And you are welcome to hold questions if you prefer to, and then contact us later if that's better for you. But we will be recording. So Amanda, if you want to start.
It is recording.
All right, thanks. Okay, so just a few housekeeping things real quick. Like I mentioned, we are now recording, so thanks for joining us. And a couple of tips on using Microsoft Teams. Not everybody's familiar with it. People seem to be more familiar with Zoom, but if you are in the Microsoft Teams interface, most of your options are going to be available up at the top of your screen, the top right of your screen. Importantly, there's a chat button which will open up a window to the right, and then you can type your type any questions or comments you have down in the bottom where it says type a new message. If you would like to raise your hand during the Q&A session, in the latter half of our presentation today, there is an option for raising your hand along with, I think, some options for other reactions there. So as I mentioned, you can enter questions into the chat anytime during the presentation. If it's something we can answer quickly, we'll do that as it's going along. And if it's something that's takes a little more time or we want to address in more depth, we'll do it at the end during our Q&A. But we'll track all those questions and try and make sure we get to all of your questions by the end of this webinar. And if you once the presentation part of this is over, we'll open it up for Q&A, at which time you guys can unmute and turn on your video if you like. Okay. So Amanda, I don't know if you wanted to, take off the screen. So for just a little overview of our program, this is the Forest Health Research Program, one of several grant programs here at CAL FIRE, California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. Our program is funded through a state program called California Climate Investments, which is a program that utilizes cap and trade funds, reinvests auction proceeds from cap and trade funds into programs such as this one that will further help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We also receive some funding from other sources, including the State General Fund, and we have continuous funding as of September 2021, which means we're a little more certain in our in what we can offer each round. We coordinate the Forest Health Research Program here at the Fire and Resource Assessment Program, which is referred to as FRAP at CAL FIRE. And we offer primarily competitive awards. Most of our funding goes out through competitive awards, and we've had 3 solicitations since 2018, with the latest one actually resulting in two sort of rounds of funding. We had a large pool of applicants, and we made 2 rounds of funding from that last solicitation. We do reserve some funding for direct awards that for the specific department, state, and program research needs. There's a website down here at the bottom which you can actually probably be a little bit hard to remember. So this is for our grant program, but if you just go to the FRAP website, which is frap.fire.ca.gov, you'll be able to find it under research and monitoring and forest health research grants. And there you'll find all kinds of information, including applicant resources and, importantly, the grant guidelines for this solicitation, which is going to give you all the information you need about how to apply and what the requirements are and what the selection criteria are and what sort of bounds there are in terms of grant agreements and things. So this is the grant guidelines and a very important document. Okay. The mission of the research program is to prioritize research projects in forest health and wildfire science that are critical to the state of California. And with that prioritization, we intend to fund sound scientific studies that support landowners, resource agencies, and fire management organizations within the state. It is sort of our program does tend to lean towards the applied sciences, which is to say, science that has some direct implications in terms of management. Thirdly, we aim to ensure that the scientific information that's generated from our program is made available to support decision making and policy. So to the extent possible, we want the outcomes of our grant-funded research projects to be, published and made available as much as possible, and not, hidden deep in behind paywalls and everything, if at all possible. And finally, importantly, to further the goals of the Wildfire and Forest Resilience Action Plan, which is really the one of the main guiding documents for the state right now in terms of addressing wildfire and forest health issues. So the priority topics that we've identified for the current fiscal year, which is fiscal year 22-23, the first one, and these are not in any order of rank, not in any rank order of importance, but the first one is disturbance recovery and strategies for various types of landowners to increase forest resilience in an altered future climate. So note that there's a focus there on climate. And if you actually go into the grant guidelines, which I'm hoping you guys can see right now, it does give you some examples of what each of these topics might include. These are includes but not limited to, so that means that these are just examples for him. Secondly, implementation effectiveness, impacts, and trade-offs of current and alternative management strategies to reduce unwanted wildfire impacts, increase carbon storage, sustain and promote biodiversity, improve water and air quality, and provide regional economic benefits. The third priority topic is understanding the contemporary range of variation and trends in fire regimes, forest conditions, and distributions in California ecosystems, in particular those less well studied. And this is in relation to historical or pre-European settlement conditions or processes. We're also interested in projects that examine forest products and utilization of forest residues related to fuels reduction and forest health treatments. I will mention here that we do have a relatively new grant program here at CAL FIRE that focuses, it's the Business and Workforce Development grant program, which does have the ability to fund research related to biomass and utilization of forest residues as well. Human dimensions, socioeconomic considerations, and environmental justice issues related to forest health and wildfire management. So it's a pretty broad-ranging topic there, but pretty critical at this moment. Improve prediction of wildland fire spread, behavior, severity, patch size, and potential impacts, particularly under extreme weather conditions and or within the wildland-urban interface. And finally, we have a new topic, a new program area this year, which we're calling special topics. I'll talk about that in a second, but this is a new sort of priority topic for us called, and it is leveraging U.S. Forest Service forest inventory and analysis data to inform future forest management. So this is a topic that specifically focuses on FIA data and how we can best make use of it. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about eligibility here. First of all, eligible applicants. We fund projects for public and other not-for-profit universities or nonprofit universities and their affiliated academic institutions. So sometimes you might have a separate research arm of a university, and that definitely is eligible. but we also can fund local, state, and federal agencies, including federal land management agencies, Native American tribes, private forest landowners, and nonprofit 501c3 organizations. There is another type of nonprofit. There is another type of nonprofit that we are handling on a case-by-case basis. I think what's the tax number? It's that 501c6, or I think that's it. But so if you are one of those, contact us and we can discuss it separately. So the activities that are eligible, we are able to fund empirical or theoretical data and analysis, model development or application, technology development and testing, science synthesis, and tool development. The science synthesis and tool development refers to sort of, it could be a literature review, or it could be development of a innovative tool for delivering scientific information to decision makers and data. You can physically manipulate resources. For example, if you're doing fuel treatments or such as prescribed fire, we can fund that in the research projects. We do have to all activities that are ground disturbing have to comply with all environmental compliance and local laws. So in other words, if you're going to do treatments as part of your research project, you have to do your NEPA and your CEQA and comply with any other local laws. Again, scientific synthesis and tool development is eligible. Importantly, you have to be able to produce publishable results and make those results publicly available. We don't require you to have publications as part of your deliverables for a grant, but we do require you to complete a technical report at the end of your project that includes any sort of analysis and write-up that would be similar to like an academic manuscript. And the projects must ultimately help our program facilitate GHG emissions reductions. They don't necessarily have to generate an emissions reduction on their own. In fact, we don't typically expect research projects to do that, but they should be part of a larger picture, and you should be able to justify them as part of a larger piece of the puzzle that can help the state reduce emissions. And this is because we're funded through the California Climate Investments Program. Projects need to be focused on and relevant to California forests and other ecosystems and their management. If you have sites, specific physical sites that you're studying, for example, if you had, project sites where you're going out to collect data and not necessarily just analyzing data for the statewide, which is also appropriate, but if you had sites, a significant portion of the geographic area proposed for study has to be contained within California. If you have sites that are discontiguous with the state, areas within the state and, outside of California, they're not ineligible, but you have to be able to justify why they're important to California forests and their management, forests and ecosystems and their management. In terms of costs, there's a whole list of eligible costs in our grant guidelines document. There's a whole table, so I won't go through all those. But they're the typical sort of costs that you might expect from a research project: labor, and fringe benefits, and equipment, and supplies, and travel, and I think that those are the major categories. Importantly, I do want to point out that our indirect cost rate across all of our grant programs in CAL FIRE is a maximum of 12%. So this is the overhead rate, or the facilities and administration costs that are usually associated with a contractor grant. We have a 12% max, but we do allow for 20%, up to 20% with an approved exception. There's some more details about that in the grant guidelines. You have to provide some supporting documentation if you're going to request more than 12%. We do allow We do support graduate student research appointments, both for individual graduate student grants and as part of larger grants. If you have graduate students as part of a larger grant, we can support that. The maximum tuition and fee remission we can provide per year is $15,000. So there are 5 project types. And what I mean by that is when you apply for your grants, your project, you have to select one of these project types, and you will be competing against people in that same project type. Excuse me. And we have funding allocated separately for these 5 different project types. The first project type is general wildfire and forest research. So that can be on any land in relevant land or ecosystem in California that sort of with the project addressing topics, the priority topics that we're talking about, that we talked about already. But if you have one of your study sites on a demonstration state forest, which is CAL FIRE state forests, CAL FIRE managed forests, that's a separate project type. So this is we're trying to encourage utilization of the state forest for research. So that's a separate project type. Graduate students are not going to be competing against other large proposals, so you just be sort of competing against each other. So that's its own project type, and that project, for those projects, the graduate student needs to have sort of written the proposal, of course, most times with the assistance of their advisor, but they need to be the lead of the project and not just sort of a an employee of the project, so to speak. They're the lead of the project, and they played the primary role in developing the proposal. So the next project type is science synthesis and tool development, which I mentioned, and these are projects that are primarily focused on not generating new information per se, but synthesizing existing scientific information and data, and in the case of tool development, developing innovative tools that will help deliver that information and make it useful for decision making. The final project type is a new project type for this year, which is special topics research. So again, if you put a proposal in under our special topics project type, you'll only be competing against others with the similar with the people who are also submitting for that. And the special topic for this year, as I mentioned, is the use of forest inventory and analysis data for California. As you may or may not be aware, California is investing in what we call in temporal intensification of FIA, meaning in the National Forest Inventory and Analysis Program, there is a 10-year. It has a 10-year cycle, meaning every one of the plots that are spread out across the entire state, forested areas of the state, is measured and then remeasured once every 10 years. And California is investing in buying down and bringing that cycle down to 5 years. So we think it's a really important area for us to help us understand the status and trends in forests, and bringing that cycle down to 5 years gives us a little more temporal resolution to that. So we really want to know in that special topics how we can best utilize that FIA data in order to inform state management of forests. The total funding availability for this request for proposals, or this grant solicitation, is $5.5 million. We have about 2.5 million of that is dedicated to the general wildfire and forest research topic. 1 million of that is dedicated to projects that have sites on demonstration state forests. About 500,000 is dedicated to graduate student research. 500,000 to science synthesis and tool development, and then about $1 million for special topics research. And you can sort of see, based on the maximum award amount, which is $500,000, dollars, except for graduate student research, which is $100,000. You can see roughly how many awards we expect to make, but that's always sort of depends on how much people are applying for. Okay, the overall process for grant application, the first thing you guys are going to have to do is to create an account in our relatively new grant system called eCivis Grants Portal. So you will create a profile in eCivis, and that will allow you to apply to actually not just our program, but other grant programs within CAL FIRE. And then you'll go to our specific solicitation, this one that we're talking about today, and then you'll submit a concept proposal, which we'll go through in a bit more in depth momentarily. And that's due April 27th, so in a few weeks here. And then we will review the concept proposals, make our selections, and then announce those selections approximately May 18th, subject to change. Once those announcements are made, we will invite full proposals from the selections that we made. So a subset of the concept proposals will be selected and invited for full proposals. And there'll be about an 8-week period for development of those full proposals. Those will be due on July 13th. And then we expect to make our selections and awards and announcements by August 17th, so mid-August. After that, there should be, it'll take a few weeks for our grants folks to get all of the awards in place and all the signatures in place. So you can expect, if you were made it that far and you were selected, you could expect a grant probably to be in place roughly mid-September at the latest. But today we're just talking about the first two parts of that process, which are creating your eCivis profile and then submitting your concept proposal. Before we sort of dive into the nuts and bolts of the application, I just wanted to bring up the concept proposal, which is really the core of the first step of your application here. Amanda, can you see the Microsoft Word here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is a template that we've sort of started to fill out here a bit, but this is the template that you'll download to start to fill out. And if you have trouble downloading this, or you need assistance, or need it in a different format, then we're happy to do that. Just contact us separately. But really, this document just asks for preliminary project title, which can change after the concept proposal. If your concept proposal is selected and you want to change your title, it's fine. A principal investigator, which in the case of graduate students should be the graduate student. I recognize that universities, that there's specific requirements for universities to be called a principal investigator, but for the purposes of our grant program, we would like the principal investigator to be noted as the graduate student. We allow about 2,500 characters, including spaces, for background and purpose, and this is really where you're going to articulate the context for your proposed project, and sort of make a compelling case for why this is important for the state in relation to those priority topics that we discussed before. Your project description is really getting into what you're going to do in the project, your methodologies, your time frame, expected outcomes, how you're going to transmit that information to the public, or to decision makers, or to journals, or whatever. So this is really what are you going to do? The first part is like, why are you doing it? Why would you do it? And this is like, what are you going to do? And then we ask for sort of a brief statement of qualifications. And really, this should be focused on convincing the reviewers of why this project will be successful. we do recognize with graduate students that you may have limited sort of experience coming in, but again, you're competing against other graduate students and not, tenured professors and so forth. So we do allow for optional figures and tables with captions, up to 2 figures and tables. And then there's also optional place here to optionally enter any references that you may have cited during the in the upper part of your concept proposal. So that's pretty much it. I mean, it's relatively short, 2,500 characters, 2,500 characters, and 750. Last thing I'll point out with your concept proposal, before we sort of dive into the process of actually applying, is that in the grant guidelines document, you will find, in addition to all of these processes and policies and procedures, there is, so under concept proposal, we do list the selection criteria. So this is like how you're going to be scored on this by our technical reviewers. We don't strictly go, ultimately in the end, we don't strictly go by numerical. We're not bound by that, but we do use the numerical scoring as sort of a first order pass at which projects we may want to select for further development into a full proposal. But you can see here that the scoring criteria are pretty clearly listed. About 30 out of 100 points, about 30% is for demonstrating the need for the research. About 40 points if you can make a compelling case for why it fits our priority topics for the state. And then, sort of feasibility, like how likely is this project to be successful? You can read through those in more detail in the grant guidelines. Similarly, if for those who make it through to the invited full proposal stage, we do have selection criteria listed in the grant guidelines for those as well, so you can see how projects are selected. And with that, I will turn it over to Amanda to give us a live demo of the actual submission of the concept proposals.
Share my screen real quick. Okay. Can you see my screen?
I can see it. I see a snowy, okay, there we go.
Perfect. All right. And everyone can hear me, I assume, since you answered me. All right. So this is the solicitation through eCivis, which you can access through the guidelines and on the applicant resources section of our website. And I have opened it in Edge. We recommend that you open it in Microsoft Edge, specifically because there are 2 sign-in screens when you start to apply, and we've run into issues with both Chrome and Firefox when it comes to that. So Edge seems to be working the best when it comes to this application platform. So you'll be able to access this. You can see the overview of the program, the due dates for each phase, the eligibilities, any financial information and caps for different project types, our contact information in case you need to reach us with any questions or concerns. And there's also a files section with both links and files or documents that you can download. So to start the application process, you'll click apply and it'll take you to the portal login page. If you do not currently have an account, you can create an account by pressing the little green button. I just want to note here that there are 2 different logins. For folks who have a Grants Network account, these are usually grant managers. If you have one, you know that you have one. So if you do have one linked to your email address that you're using, please use the Grants Network login. Most folks are going to use the portal login. And once you create an account, you'll be able to create a profile. There are only a couple of really required fields. So if you want to just create one, fill out the required fields, and then go back to edit it when you submit your application, or for submitting your application, you have the choice to do that. So I'm going to log in. And once you're in, you can create a new application. So you just click on that and it'll take you to another login page. And this is where we've found issues with Chrome and Firefox. It's that secondary login page within the full page. And so you've got the option to go back to the solicitation if you want to. There's our email address right here if you have any questions. And so you can log in again. I'll be using eCivis because my account is tied to eCivis, but most folks will be using the portal login. And once you log in, it'll pop you into the applications page. So right here, if you haven't yet created a profile, this little edit button will be blue and it'll say open. And you've got the choice to edit your applicant information. So that would be first name, last name, email, I think are the only required fields to start the process at least. All of your applications will be in this section right here. And this is my brand new one. It's untitled. So as soon as I said create new application, this popped up for me. So I'll click on that. And right here, it tells you how many days are due before you have to submit this, or how many days this is due. So currently it says 22 days. The concept proposal application is right here, and you can click to open that. I recommend that you fill in the research project type first, because there are conditional fields that open based on the research project type. And this is specific to the PI or the graduate student and the faculty advisor. So in with graduate student research, the graduate student and the faculty advisor will pop up. For any of the others, it'll just be the PI or the principal investigator information that pops up. If for whatever reason you don't fill this out initially, and you don't end up filling out your information here, because these are required fields with the little asterisks next to them, it won't allow you to submit. So we wouldn't be missing any information because it just won't allow you to submit, and it'll tell you which fields are missing. So I'll just applying organization. I'll just put that in here real quick. We'll just go with that. And then an organization type, I'll make it a university. And there is a question here for whether or not the organization is a registered 501c3. There is an option to put in a prefix if you choose to do so. Just go with the first and last name, the suffix if you choose to do so, your title in the organization, that is optional, the institutional affiliation, in case you are not necessarily affiliated with the organization that's requesting the grant, you have the option of, well, it's not an option, it's a requirement, but you can fill out, or you can state which institution you are affiliated with. So I'll just say CAL FIRE for now for this one. Your address and information is all required here. And then there's the section on project information. So the preliminary, sorry about that, project title. We'll just go with the best research project ever, again, just because. And then you'll enter a brief summary. The character limits here will show up in that help text underneath each of these fields if there is a character limit. It includes spaces, so it's 400 characters including spaces. And we do request the funding information, and it's just the total funding that you are planning on requesting from this grant right here. And since I'll just go with the max amount. And then the estimated total project cost includes match. So it's all of the funding that is going to be going into this project. So let's just match it the exact same amount. You can save your work here by saving draft. And like I said, everything with an asterisk is required. So even if you try to mark it complete for submission, it won't let you mark complete, and it'll show you how many fields still require attention. And it'll also highlight that field for you. So this field right here still needs attention. There is a link to our grant guidelines and our applicant resources page. And I'll just select the demo file and upload that. And once I mark that complete, you have the option to submit it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh and show you something really quickly. This was something that I did want to note earlier. This will show you all of your applications that are here or that you have created and what their status is. Currently, both of mine are in draft. So to go to the application, you can do that. It automatically has me signed in still. We do not have a limit on how many applications each applicant can submit. So if you have multiple projects or if you have someone applying for you in your department for multiple PIs, that is also an option because all of the PI information is in each of the applications. So even though the profile is tied to it, we'll have the information for each project's principal investigators and or graduate student and faculty advisor. Another thing I wanted to note is there are two scroll bars. There's an internal scroll bar and an external scroll bar. This is going to be important later on for any selected applications to go forward with the full application, because this is how you'll be able to access the budget and the goals section. For now, for the concept proposals, we do not request this information because we are just requesting the total amount for the project for both requested and including match. So you can just disregard this portion right here, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And I think that's pretty much all I had. There are troubleshooting. Go ahead.
They do need to click when they're ready to go. They need to click submit though, right? Like they can save it as a draft and then you can submit.
And then I just clicked submit here. And when I go back out to the section here, it'll show you that it is now in concept proposal review. And when you enter the application, oh, you can't enter the application. But when you enter your site here, you can no longer access it. It's grayed out, but you can view it.
Right.
So anything with a blue line has not been submitted. Everything that's under review is in gray, and if the status bar is in red, there's an error with the application and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so it's important here, I think, for folks to know that you can submit your proposal at any time, right? You can save it, come back and work on it, save it again, come back and work on it. But when you're ready to submit it, you can just click the submit button. You won't be able to edit it at that point, but if before the deadline of, I think, 3 p.m. on April 27th, you go, oh no, I need to change something, just contact us, right? Like if it's before that deadline and we can open it for you, you can edit it and then resubmit it before that 3 p.m. deadline on the 27th, and that's fine. So you're not totally stuck once you hit that submit button, as long as we're before the closing of the grant solicitation, concept proposal solicitation. All right.
And there is a troubleshooting guide with any issues that have been experienced with some of our other grant programs and using this platform. And you can find that on our applicant resources webpage. And you can email us with anything, any questions. If there's any technical issues with the platform itself, you're welcome to email support at eCivis. That information is also in this platform too. So just wanted to let you guys know that that is available.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to take over the share and get back. Okay. So questions and discussion. Before we sort of dive into that, though, I do want to bring up again this applicant resources page, which again, frap.fire.ca.gov is our website. And then you can just navigate to research and monitoring, forest health research grants, and then you'll find applicant resources here. I will also note, actually, if I go back one, we do have sort of a list of current and past awarded grants if you want to get a sense of what we've funded in the past. Some of these have more information available than others, including abstracts and publications and so forth. But you can get a sense of like what we've funded. But again, for applicants, research and monitoring, forest health research grants, applicant resources. And this will give you the solicitation that Amanda was just on, right? It'll get you to the grant guidelines, which I was showing you before. And then it'll get you all of these templates, which you may really the only one you need for now is the concept proposal, but the rest of them you may need for other parts of the full application. There are links here to eCivis support, which is what Amanda mentioned. That will take you to, there's an FAQ and a sort of a guide to working within eCivis if you have trouble. And then, of course, we're always available for questions. Okay, with that, I think we'll just sort of open it up for questions. Maybe we'll start with the questions that we didn't get answered in the chat. I don't know if, Max, if you were sort of monitoring those.
Yeah, so we did have a few questions come in during the presentations, and I can point our attention to those. One that I wanted to bring, two that I wanted to bring up that were answered, but I think might be relevant to other folks. I wanted to make sure people saw them. We had a question about demonstration state forest research and whether that can include areas outside of demonstration state forests, such as national forest land. The answer is yes. They just have to include at least some of their research sites on California demonstration state forests.
Yeah, we've even had some projects in the past that utilized some state forest data, like inventory data that we've had, and those qualify without necessarily putting boots on the ground in the demo forest. So they're utilizing the databases that we have on hand for the state forest. So that qualifies as well.
And the other one is about our special topic on leveraging FIA data. And this question was just noting that the plot locations are not publicly available. And I wanted to pull people's attention to our guidelines in the priority topics section of the guidelines. We do have a note about that. And what we say there is that it's the responsibility of the applicant to ensure permission is granted from the Forest Service FIA program to access exact FIA plot coordinates if those are needed for your research. I wanted to also just see if you had anything else you wanted to add on that, Tadashi.
I would just note that it can be, if you don't already have access to the exact FIA plot locations and you need it, or you expect to need it for your project, it can be a somewhat lengthy process to get that approval. So something that you want to start talking to those folks about now to get a sense of like whether it'll work within the time frame of your project.
Great, thanks, Tadashi. And finally, we have another question. Are graduate students able to apply together as co-PIs for a single graduate student researcher award? Or is that only allowed to have one or an individual student per applicant, per application?
Yeah, we haven't had that situation come up before. And I think for graduate students, it would be a singular PI, but it doesn't preclude you from having another, if it fits within the budget. So the graduate student maximum award amount is 100,000. And if it fits within your proposed budget, you can certainly have another graduate student on your proposal. But we can only have like one person listed as the PI and the graduate student awardee, in other words. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Hopefully, Nina, let us know if that covered your question fully. You had a second piece to your question, which I'll just verbally answer. Yes, people can be involved in multiple proposals. And we have a hand up from Erin. Erin, are you able to unmute yourself? Yes, you should be able to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering about the human dimensions, socioeconomic considerations priority. So just want to make clear, like it might be a little bit harder to demonstrate, like for example, GHG reduction if you were looking at public perceptions of wildfire risk. Is that going to be a problem? Like, should we try and make that connection explicitly? It would be sort of tangential, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess some research projects are going to be more direct than others, right? But certainly all research projects, I would venture to say most research projects are going to be an indirect, any impact they have on GHG reduction is sort of more of an indirect thing. And I will say that it's what we're required to do as a program is to show that overall our program is contributing to ultimately to facilitating emissions reductions, which, you know, I think the general case that can be made is that, you know, if you're creating healthier, more resilient ecosystems, both in terms of communities and, you know, so forests and other land cover types, I think that if they're more healthy and more resilient, then we're creating a system that is ultimately going to be less prone to large scale GHG emissions. So yes, it's going to be indirect, and you're right, it's probably a little bit harder to make the connection might be a little more circuitous for something that's focusing more on human communities and socioeconomic considerations, but but I think you can make the case, in a more indirect way. And then finally, I will point out that it is, if you probably want to look at the scoring criteria and see sort of what the GHG emissions, how much it weighs. We don't explicitly take that into account in the concept proposal phase. In the full proposal phase, it accounts for about 5% of your score out of 100. 5.700, 5%.
And then you also, I think you also said the second half of the answer to the second half of my question, which is, a lot of structure damage is not in forest, it's in shrublands. And so resilient ecosystems generally, even though the title of the opportunity is forest research, shrubland research, especially in this dimension, is okay, correct?
Yes, we are not discriminating in terms of particular major land cover types in California. Our title of our program is a relic of our original tie to the Forest Health grant program, but we are broader than that. So I think it's pretty, despite the title, it should be pretty clear in the grant guidelines that we're looking for. We don't discriminate just by forest. Does that answer your question?
Yep, I turned myself off. Thank you.
No worries.
So that's it for questions that have come into the chat so far. Please feel free to keep putting them in there if you have additional questions, but we do have another hand or two raised. Aaron, I see your hand raised again. Did you have a follow-up to that? Or if you have a second question, maybe we'll jump to the next person and then come back to you. Okay, so AJ, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just had a quick question about for the tool development proposals, are you, I guess like other proposals as well in general, are you able to include collaborators from CAL FIRE, or can you speak to the ability to work with CAL FIRE in the scope of a proposal, and whether or not that's, I don't know, or if you can, any guidance, I'd be appreciated.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. So you can have. I think there's nothing preventing you from having sort of CAL FIRE support for a project. We can't pay ourselves with our grant program, obviously, so you wouldn't be able to have any CAL FIRE folks in the budget per se. But you can have them as sort of, if it's sort of a contributed, let's say part of the key personnel, part of the project team, and they're doing a work that's approved and not otherwise sort of part of CAL FIRE standard services, then there's nothing preventing you from sort of collaborating with CAL FIRE folks. You definitely would want to have a letter of probably a letter of commitment, a letter if they're going to be actually participating in the project, and you would want to have a letter of probably, yeah, and there's 3 required letters of support, or up to 3 required letters of support for the project. So that could also come from CAL FIRE.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, so for the tool development, how important is it to already have your audience in mind? I mean, obviously it would be great if you did, but if you don't, if you have this idea for this tool and you don't know your audience quite yet,
yeah.
Is that going to be a big red flag?
I don't know if it would be a red flag per se. I mean, I do think that you would probably want to make a compelling case as to why the tool would be useful, right? Like and a tool could be useful to different audiences. It could be, policymakers or individual private landowners or regional groups that are doing, planning or whatever sort of group it is. But you might be, I think if you weren't able to sort of if you didn't have an audience in mind and you weren't able to sort of make that case as to why this particular tool might be relevant and useful and important, and generally speaking, that might give give reviewers a little bit of pause. But we don't necessarily have specific selection criteria in that regard, so it'd be more a matter of you sort of making the case within the context of your proposal as to why this is going to be an important tool.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So we're approaching the end of the hour. I haven't seen any new questions come in the chat. We probably have time for one more quick question if anyone wants to either put it in there or raise their hand.
In the meantime, I want to just bring your attention to the fact that we will be holding a concept proposal application office hour Monday, the 17th of April at 11 a.m. So if you would like to register for that, I'm putting the link in the chat right now.
And then just to be also clear, we will, for those applicants that get selected to move on to the full proposal stage, we'll be having another workshop similar to this to help walk you through the much more complicated, well, maybe not complicated, but much more, there's much more information requested in the full proposal. So, but we will be having another workshop and probably another office hours for that. But the office hours are not the only time you can get a hold of us. It's just a time when we'll make available. You guys can pop in, ask some questions. We can share screens and things like that if we need to. And then you can always contact us separately through the emails or phone numbers that are on your screen now. All right. Oh. Have we got another question there? Nina, go ahead. I don't know if you're able to unmute. Is she able to unmute herself?
Oh, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that.
No
yeah, sorry to jump in at the very end here. I asked a question. Thank you for answering my earlier questions. One of my questions earlier was about the multiple grad students serving as co-PIs on a single project, and it sounds like that might not work. And so I just have it's a pretty specific question, but a friend of mine who's in a different discipline and I are sort of talking about collaborating on a project. And I'm wondering if it would be, it's a mixed methods project. And so I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to, rather than apply as co-PIs, sort of split the project by foci or like method type and apply separately. But it would still be sort of like, the work would still be geared towards a few sort of central questions, but the methods and the work would be split up into two different proposals.
That's interesting. Yeah, proposals that are like obviously tied together, right?
Right, they would be tied together, but the work would be presented in two separate proposals. Is that something that would be appropriate or not really?
Yeah, we don't have anything preventing that necessarily. You certainly could do that. I think I don't know that we would have any way to tie the two proposals together other than, yeah, that's a really interesting question. We might have to get back to you on that because I'd have to sort of talk to our our department grants management folks who kind of have the final say as some of this administrative stuff as to whether we can consider, two separate grant proposals as being tied. It seems like that might be, my guess is that will be not possible. So in other words, so it's like two proposals. It would essentially be one proposal for unless it was like under the $100,000 limit. Combined together, right? So my guess would be no. So, but you could certainly do that, and then but you would run the risk of like one proposal getting funded and the other not getting funded.
Right.
That would be my only caution. I'll look into that a little bit more, and certainly if you want to email us just to follow up on that. I think we might have your email from the webinar registration, but you can follow up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I saw Gina typing there for a second, but the the ellipsis has gone away. So if there are any other questions, we're happy to hang out. I got it. Thanks both of you guys, Gina and Nina and Brenna, and everybody else. Thanks for joining. I guess we'll just call it now since not hearing any other questions. But again, please come to our virtual office hours, or just contact us separately if you have questions. We certainly hope to see a lot of good concept proposals come in, and we're happy to help you through any of the process if you need it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good afternoon.